It was a beautiful and sunny day when the people decided they'd finally had enough. They'd had enough oppression and they yearned for economic freedom. So, 228 representatives of the people from both sides of the aisle took to the battlefield to finally strike a blow against the great Emerald Dragon. That day was today. If a musket would not be your first choice for fighting dragons, or if you're finding value in these videos, please consider delegating to the Army of Spies stake pool, ticker AOS. So, what you might ask actually happened today with these 228 champions of economic freedom facing off against the dragon? Well, it all revolved around this. The SEC's, or let's just say it, Gensler's Staff Accounting Bulletin 121, better known as SAB 121. It looks like this, but you don't want to read all this. What does this actually mean? Well, funny you should ask, because just today, Patrick McHenry got on the House floor and told you the answer to that question. So here are the actual remarks that Patrick McHenry made on the House floor. But who is Patrick McHenry? You remember him. He's this guy, bow tie, little glasses, white hair. He kind of looks like a young and virile Orville Redenbacher out cruising for ladies. But here's what he actually said about SAB 121. Because they called it staff guidance, remember it's staff accounting bulletin, the SEC could avoid public comment and the rulemaking process governed by the APA. Not only did the SEC bypass Congress and the Comptroller General, but the commission did not even consult with the prudential regulators responsible for overseeing banks prior to SAB 121. So this is a huge power grab by Gensler. He's moving in. What McHenry's implying here is that Gensler was trying to move into the territory of bank regulators. He says, thanks to the work of the House Financial Services Committee and my friend Senator Lummis, another great crypto champion, the GAO rightly deemed SAB 121 a rule for purposes of the Congressional Review Act, providing Congress with the opportunity to right this wrong. SAB, and here he's going to actually tell you what's wrong with SAB 121. SAB 121 requires financial institutions and firms that are safeguarding their customers' digital assets to hold those assets on their balance sheet. That means banks would be required to take on significant capital, liquidity, and other costs under the existing prudential regulatory framework. This essentially makes it cost prohibitive for financial institutions to custody their customers' digital assets. This is a massive deviation from how highly regulated banks are traditionally required to treat the assets they hold on behalf of their customers. Let's be clear, this change is not for the better. It limits the options for consumers and increases concentration risk. Perhaps even worse, it could leave Americans' assets vulnerable in the event of a bank failure, as we saw with Silicon Valley Bank last year. If you want Americans to be able to engage with digital assets safely and securely, banks, which are some of the most regulated businesses in our country, are probably the best way. Unfortunately, SAB 121 makes that nearly impossible. And then he goes on to talk about how this is a bipartisan effort. And this is true. People on both sides of the aisle don't like SAB 121 for good reason. It forces the banks to make the crypto they're holding in a custodial way for their customers a liability that has to be paid back. And that also requires a lot of other things and creates a lot of other problems. So banks aren't going to want to custody digital assets under SAB 121, which is exactly why Gensler put it in place. This doesn't make any sense, you're thinking to yourself, because this whole current administration, the current Biden White House, needs to get reelected. Why would they ever do something like this? It doesn't make any sense. By the way, I love McHenry. We're just making jokes about bow ties here, guys. He's definitely one of the heroes of crypto in Congress. So I love McHenry. I'll be sad when he's gone. We're just making jokes. But this was a response of the White House, which was not a joke. This is the statement of administrative policy from the White House on SAB 121 issued today. This was in response to the impending House vote. Basically, the White House said, hey, yeah, that's all fine and dandy. Go ahead and have your vote. But by the way, if the president were presented with your bill, he would veto it. How does this make any sense? This post says the last sentence shows that the White House either isn't aware or is simply ignoring the regulatory impasse the digital asset industry has been has been facing under this administration, maintaining a comprehensive and effective regulatory framework. There currently isn't one. Industry participants have been asking the SEC and Congress for help and receiving Wells notices in return. True. Introduce substantial financial instability and market uncertainty? Question mark. Isn't the market more uncertain than ever because Congress hasn't established a framework and the SEC continues to regulate by enforcement? I would say that is pretty much the perspective of the entire crypto community. Why is the White House doing this, especially when they need to get reelected? Jake Chervinsky echoed that sentiment, saying SAB 121 is illogical and illegal. The SEC adopted it in violation of the CRA and APA for no reason other than to harm the crypto industry. The White House should have walked away from this mess instead of doubling down on attacking U.S. companies. Not smart in an election year. Well, here is the ever insightful Caitlin Long, really one of the foremost experts on banks and crypto banking and bank custody of digital assets. Here's Caitlin Long with an answer. Thoughts about Biden veto threat. So this was before the actual vote, after the Biden veto threat had come out, but before the vote. Thoughts about Biden veto threat before Congress votes to repeal SAB 121. Big banks lobbied hard and lost. Liz still controls White House financial services policy. She's saying the dragon controls White House financial services policy. And I think if you look at the rhetoric that's been spouted by the dragon, which we've covered many, many, many times on this channel, it really does seem to be the guiding narrative for the White House financial services staff, and really, all of the White House economic policy as it pertains to crypto. The dragon's real goal isn't helping big banks; it's a CBDC. This has always been the case. The real goal has always been moving toward a central bank digital currency. And you can say there are a lot of reasons for this. I think all of us in crypto have known all along that's the end game. For the people that are attacking crypto, it's not because they care about your bags or your moon Lambo. They don't give a damn about your moon Lambo. What they do care about is getting a central bank digital currency. And you can imagine or suspect a lot of different motivations for wanting a CBDC. Maybe the most dystopian, and who knows, maybe it's the most likely. I think a lot of people in crypto would say this is the most likely. The most dystopian motivation for this would be the amount of social control it would give people like the Dragon, who have very progressive social policy agendas. They would like us all to obey and conform. I think that's become apparent over the last couple of years. It's become very apparent, especially in social media, especially when it comes to the things we are all talking about on social media platforms, just like this one. They would like a lot more control. We know that because they exercised a lot of control when they could before all that came out. All that became mainstream knowledge, at least for people who are paying attention. And with a CBDC, I mean, regardless of whether or not you think they would, they definitely could exercise an amount of social control the world has never seen before. I mean, we've seen bits and pieces of this in terms of the CCP's control of all social things in China. We have seen this, but it's something we've never really seen before in the modern industrialized Western world. And with a CBDC in the US, that would suddenly become a possibility. And I think one of the smartest things I've ever heard in crypto, specifically in Cardano, specifically from Charles, is that it's not about whether or not a system makes it so someone shouldn't do something. It's about whether or not the system makes it so they can't do something. they can't do something bad. A CBDC would change all that. Right now, if I go and get, a couple of hundies out of the ATM, the federal government only has limited number of ways to control what I do with that $100 bill. I can go hand that to someone and do a lot of different things with that $100 bill, and the federal regulators are not going to have a lot of oversight over me handing that person the 100. But the second we have a CBDC, we're in a whole new world, and it's a world where they can control a lot of those kinds of things. So, to be fair, nobody really knows what someone like the Dragon would do with a CBDC. The problem is, we know what they could do. Luckily, it looks like a lot of Congress also doesn't like where this is going, at least a lot of the House. So you're probably aware things are pretty polarized in Washington right now. A lot of votes happen strictly down party lines. There's not a lot of crossing the aisle going on these days, especially when the White House comes out and says straight up, hey, if you pass this, we're going to veto it. A lot of people in the same party as the current administration, they don't love to be in opposition to the White House because that administration, they're technically leading the party. They are the leaders of that party right now, the de facto leaders. They don't like to be in opposition with them, but it turned out that didn't matter. 21 Democrats still voted along with the Republicans to repeal SAB 121. This post says the SAB 121 repeal passes the House. 21 Democrats voted for it. That is huge. Democrats usually vote as a block, but 21 Democrats broke ranks to support Crypto Day. This is news. Fire. Next, watch the Senate. If top Dems support this, we're past peak dragon. I would agree with that. Fingers crossed. So I believe this post was actually edited. And originally it said, next, watch the Senate. If Schumer supports this, we're past peak dragon. Fingers crossed. I would agree with either one. If either Schumer or any other top Democrats support this, we are past peak dragon. And that, my friends, would be fantastic for crypto. So that was some of the big crypto news today. But coming back to Cardano proper, I couldn't believe my eyes today when I saw this post and I noticed the id logo down there. And then I saw the word doom. And then I saw Charles's text coming to Hydra. I couldn't believe it because I remember a long, long time ago, and this will mean nothing to any of you who weren't around in this era, but a long, long time ago, I still remember when I got Doom to run on the old family computer. I think it was a 486. It was a long time ago, so I could be mistaking which computer it was, but I think it was the 486. And somehow I got a copy of Doom. I think it was the only video game in the entire house that wasn't related to the 8-bit Nintendo, which was already, out of date at this point. But getting Doom to run on the computer was a happy moment at that time. Now, decades and decades later, a long time later, I'm also going to be happy to see Doom running on Hydra. Not because I'll actually play it. Let's face it, Doom, while it's very cool, it's running on Hydra. It's not exactly a modern video game. Okay, maybe I'll play it once or twice just for the sake of nostalgia, but it will serve as an excellent sort of exhibition tool to show people that Hydra is up and running and you can do things on Hydra that have actual utility, things that you don't really see a lot of, or you don't think a lot of, at least in crypto, like running, simple, classic nostalgic video games like Doom. Finally, here are a few things I've been really excited about for a while, and I've been meaning to post about them. And for unfortunate reasons, today's probably the day to kind of tie all this together. So I've been really excited about how strongly RFK Jr. has been supporting crypto in a lot of different ways, and we've covered some of them. Some of these things, maybe aren't the most practical in the world, but I still love the sounds of them. Like this RFK Jr. at Michigan rally. I'm going to put the entire US budget on blockchain. Every American can look at every budget item in the entire budget anytime they want, 24 hours a day. We're going to have 300 million eyeballs on our budget. And if somebody is spending 16,000 for a toilet seat, everybody's going to know about it. This is certainly a laudable goal. Would this be extremely difficult as a practical matter? Sure. I still like the idea that he's thinking about it. And like I mentioned yesterday, it was no surprise to me that Charles was going to support RFK Jr. He was going to endorse RFK Jr. And it was awesome that RFK Jr. seemed to appreciate that endorsement with this post right here that we talked about just yesterday. Then just today, this comes out. New York Times, RFK Jr. says worm got into my brain and ate a portion of it. Perfect. Finally, we get a candidate who is super strongly pro crypto. He even appreciates it when one of the founders of our ecosystem, endorses his candidacy. And then, not long after, it's revealed hey, maybe a worm got inside my head, ate some of my brain, and died. This is, guys, this is why we can't have nice things. Brain eating worms. I hope you're still having a fantastic week, and I'll talk to you soon.